Good evening, everyone. Today, I have planned to analyze a concept that is very important with relations to the competitive examination as well as the general education of geography syllabus during undergraduation and the post graduation courses. Our today's topic is classification of the world climate given by the scholar Vladimir Koppen. However, before going to discuss about the classification scheme of the Koppen, I want to reconnect and reorient your mind towards the initial lecture of the climatology. During the initial lectures of our syllabus, climatology, I have dealt with that there are three important branches of the climatology. Most importantly, physical climatology, in which we study about the physical composition, structure, layers, and the elements of the weather and the climate in detail. There is another branch of the climatology that is known as applied climatology. In applied climatology, we focus upon the application of the knowledge of the weather and the climate and its various elements in our daily life geography. Applied climatology discusses about the concept of the calculation of the various elements of the weather, especially temperature, pressure, wind directions, wind movement, insolation, humidity, and the other elements of the weather and the climate and its statistical data and the representation of these data for the weather analysis, for the weather predictions, and the other purposes. Though applied climatology indicates about the applications of the knowledge of the climatology into practical geography, into the practical field and the practical observation, especially the weather stations, industries, agricultural sectors, and as well as the domestic studies, settlement, they apply the elements of the weather and the climate and their statistics in the practical applications. However, the important branch that is known as the regional climatology is also one of the important aspects of the studying climatology. In regional climatology, we focus upon the regional and the spatial scale of the distribution of the weather and the climate at average over the globe. How there are the various types of the climatic zones and it evolved over the space and over the global surfaces. We know that at global level, we may have the different types of the climate and different types of the weather conditions that vary from one place to another place. There might be the tundra climate at high latitudes area in the northern hemisphere. That may be the climate of the frozen characteristics, or that may be the climates of the colder nature. There might be the different type of the climate that is known as the desert climate. It occupies the space in the areas of the mid-latitude deserts as well as hot and the cold deserts of the world located in the subtropical belt of the world. There may be the climate like Mediterranean type of the climate in which there is the winter rainfall and the citrus fruit as a type of the vegetations. So there are the various type of the climatic zones over the globe, and studying about these climates and their variations over the globe and their variations from one place to another place or one space to another space is known as regional climatology. So the classification of the world's climate by the scholars like the Koeppen, Trevartha or Thornweight, they have they have taken the methods that involve into the regional differentiation and the regional variations. How climate and its elements varied over the Earth's surface spatially. So their approaches may be regional. However, there are two types of the approaches that are involved into the classification of the world climate. The first approach is known as the genetic approaches of the classification of the world climate. In genetic approaches of the world climate's classification, scholars adopt the evolution and the genesis of the climate indicators over the place. Suppose if we are discussing about the equatorial rainforest as a climatic zones, so the scholars who have adopted the genetic approach of the classification of the world climate, they adopted the methods like how the equatorial earth surface experienced the vertical solar radiations, how this zone is classified into the very hot and humid climatic characteristics, what is the level of the latitudes and the solar insolation and its amount that causes for the very hot conditions of the temperature in that region. They analyze the level of relative humidity in that areas and their causes for the relative humidity as because of the important source reason like oceans and the natural vegetations are there as a source of the air moisture in the sky of the equatorial atmosphere. So we can say that genetic approaches focused upon the evolution and the genesis and the region for the evolution of that type of the climate. Suppose with the help of genetic classification, we can observe about the tundra climate where the insolation is received always in the slanting ways. There is the oblique sun rays that is recorded at the polar surfaces. That's why the amount of insolation is low, and so the temperature is also low with response to less amount of insolation. So these classifications are based upon the genetic classification. On the other hand, another approach that can be adopted for the studying world climate is empirical approach. Empirical approach means if we go to the field and analyze the data without any genesis and the evolution kind of the climatic theme and its evolutions of the region, we focus upon the statistical averages, statistical data of temperature, pressure, precipitation, relative humidity, levels of natural vegetation in that areas. So empirical classification is based upon the field observation, statistical data calculations, statistical data collections, studies, as well as the term of the particular climate is assigned to that climate if we achieve a certain kind of the temperature, pressure and the humidity level. So empirical observations, empirical methodology is based upon the weather elements and its data and its averages that is related to that unique area of the world. So empirical approaches are the another approaches of the classification of the world climates. In that sequence, Vladimir Koeppen, who was a German scholar, who was a botanist primarily and the climatologist also, has also presented his classification of the world climate through the empirical methods on the basis of the natural vegetation and its zone, characteristics of the vegetations, as well as later he has also adopted his methodology on the basis of the certain precipitation level as well as the temperature characteristics of the areas of the world. Vladimir Koeppen has given his classification of the world climate in 1900, and later on he has revised also his scheme of the classification in 1936 also. He has revised his scheme, but in 1953 the detailed version of the Koeppen's classification of the world climate was evolved with the help of the Giger Pohi, who has collaborated the scheme of the Koeppen, and he has added certain materials with respect to the Koeppen's climate and its classification. So the detailed version is known as Koeppen's Giger-Pohi classification of the world climate. Another question that arises, how the Koeppen has classified the world climate into different types. So the answer is, the Koeppen's classification of the world climate is generally based upon the natural vegetation zone and its variations over the globe that was already given by another scholar, that is known as Candolle. Candolle in 1874, Candolle in 1874 has given his world's characteristics of the natural vegetations. He has classified the natural vegetation zone on the basis of their different characteristics, and that was very helpful to the Koeppen's classification of the world climate. So Koeppen's classification of the world climate was based upon the Candolle classification of the natural vegetations and its variations. Candolle has classified the natural vegetation and its zone into certain 5 zones of the world natural vegetations. हमने आपसे ये बताया था कि over the globe there are the latitudinal lines, and these latitudinal lines have major implications in the world's climate also. So on the basis of the latitudinal variations from 0 latitude to 90 degree north and from 0 to 90 degrees south, or in other way we can say that from the equator towards the pole or equator towards the south pole, there are the certain zones and the zonal variations of the natural vegetations, and that is in the characteristics of their leaf, their type of the vegetations. So Koeppen has classified the world climate into the major 5 zones, that is the climate A. In other words, we can say that Koeppen's classification is alphabetical in nature. It is quantitative in nature. So if you know the alphabet, you can easily grasp the world's classification given by the Koeppen. And I am sure that everyone knows the alphabet of A, B, C, and D, and E. In terms of the natural vegetation zone, Koeppen has adopted the climatic zone of A, that is known as A climate. It is represented as a tropical climate where there is the winterless season or a very short dry season, and the temperature is always above 18 degrees Celsius. It is a zone of the tropical belt that was termed as the A as the alphabet, and it is very warm and the moist conditions throughout the year. This zone is known as the megathermal zone by the Koeppen in accordance with the Candolle also. That megathermal zone is represented between the tropics, that is the tropical humid and warm climate, where the temperature is always above 18 degrees Celsius. Even in the winter season, temperature is always above the 18 degrees Celsius. Another climate that was given through the alphabet B. B climate type is located in the dry region. That is the region where the evaporation exceeds to the precipitation. It means that evaporation is more in compared to the rainfall, in compared to the precipitation, evaporation is more. This is the xerophytes vegetation type. Xerophytes vegetations are located in the dry region, that is represented through the climate B type given by the Koeppen, where there is always a desert type of the characteristics. We can say that desert type of the characteristics, either cold or the hot desert type of characteristics, are found in the climatic zone B type, that is dry in nature. There is the climate C type. C type of the climate is represented through the mesothermal characteristics as well as the this C type of the climate is represented through the mild winters, and there is the temperature is below 18 degrees Celsius respectively. In the warm month, temperature is below 18 degrees Celsius, and that varies from 8 degree to 18 degrees Celsius in the climate C type. This is the mesothermal climate. We can say that it is the mid-latitude type of the climate. It is the warm temperate type of the climate that is represented through the C type of the climate by the scholar Koeppen. There is another type of climate that is known as D type of the climate given by the scholar Koeppen. In D type of the climate, that is known as the microthermal climate. This climate is located near to the taiga belt or the coniferous belt of the world, located in Siberian part of the world, as well as the mid latitudes or the middle latitudes. That is the warmest month is between the 3 degrees Celsius, and it is always above to the 10 degrees Celsius temperature is found, that is ranges between 3 to 10 degrees Celsius respectively. The last type of climatic zone that is given by the scholar Koeppen was E climate. E climate represents the permafrost climate, or you can say that the climate that is characterized by the summerless season, and average temperature of the warmest month is always below 10 degrees Celsius. However, scholar Koeppen has further utilized certain small alphabet, small f, smaller m, smaller w, and smaller s, and it represents the certain weather characteristics. F represents the precipitation throughout the year, and average temperature is always in the coldest month is always above to the 18 degrees Celsius, and the precipitation is annual precipitation is always 6 centimeter in every month of a year. M represents to the monsoon type of the climate, where there is the short dry season and the average precipitation in the driest month is always less than 6 centimeter. W, small w, represents the winter dry season. It means that in winter there is no rainfall. S represents the summer season where there is the dry summer. It means that the precipitation occurs always during the winter season. There is no precipitation in summer season. Thank you so much. I will continue for the further discussion over the Vladimir Koeppen's and its classification of the world climate. Thank you so much. In next video, I will share more detail about the climatic classification of the world climate given by the scholar Vladimir Koeppen. Thanks a lot for watching this video.